Hey everybody, Questwise here, and today I wanted to go in our sort of back to basics thing. We've fallen away from that for a little while, but I figured we'd go back to this game that I've had for quite a long time, and this is a game that part of it it's it's a supplement for an earlier game that came out in 1994, and I've had it since about that time, maybe 94, 95. We played it a couple times in college, but it's one of those supplements, one of those games that I find very unique and I find very very awesome and fun, and so I've never gotten rid of it, even though I've only played it maybe 5 times, 6 times or something. That is Council of Wyrms. That's for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Second Edition. Like I said, it came out in 1994. It allows you, it is a campaign supplement, it is a game supplement, one of the famous box sets that came out from TSR in those days. And it is a game in which it allows you to play dragon characters, as well as a bunch of other stuff. And we'll get into that other stuff later. But the ability to play dragons was such a cool concept to me. I've always wanted to do something like that. And so I picked this up, like I said, maybe a year after it came out. And and it was tough trying to get people in college to find people. We had an ongoing D&D group, which we played extensively. We played mostly in Greyhawk, maybe a little bit in Forgotten Realms, but mostly Greyhawk in those days. And this was one of those games that I finally roped a few people into playing with me, and I had a ton of fun with it, and it was really really fun. And like I said, but I only got to play it maybe 5 or 6 times. Definitely something I want to remedy again. As soon as this whole craziness is over, I would love to set up a campaign with some folks to play this, because it's very unique and it's very different, and it opened up a whole lot of new possibilities. If you're not familiar with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Second Edition, it ran for a good many years, and towards the end of its lifespan, they began to experiment with a lot of crazy different things. So we had things like Planescape, and we had things like Spelljammer and Council of Wyrms, and these cool box sets that sort of took the fantasy world in whole different directions and stuff, and it was really really cool. And some of them I liked better than others. Spelljammer was cool, but it was not definitely one of my favorites. And I really really was intrigued by Council of Wyrms. So let's talk about the box contents first. First of all, in the box you got 3 booklets, you got 3 poster maps, and 12 cards, card stock, like 8.5 by 11. The 3 books were the rules book, I should say booklet. They're about 64 pages each. There was the campaign booklet, and finally the adventures book as well too. So they broke it up. I mean, that was pretty typical in those days for the box sets to have these booklets and stuff. It would break things up a little bit. But the rules book took what was established in the Second Edition Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide, and added some stuff to it, so that you were able to play dragon characters that were sort of compatible with each other. Now, these were very powerful characters. Even as hatchlings, they were very powerful. And we'll go into some details about the other things that you can play at the same time, too. So what we did, if I remember correctly, is we had each player create 2 characters. So you had a dragon character, and then you had a kindred or a half-dragon character as well, too, which we'll go into further down in the video. But we created characters, dragon characters. Now, only good and neutral dragons were allowed. And now, when I say neutral dragons, this is something that I think was out there in some of the monster manuals, and some of the monster binders and stuff, but I wasn't too familiar with them. So when I got this box set, I was super excited about being able to explore things like the gem dragons, emerald dragons, crystal dragons, diamond dragons, those kinds of things, right? They were neutral dragons, that fit in between the metallic dragons that were evil and the chromatic dragons, or excuse me, metallic dragons that were good and the chromatic dragons that were evil. And so it gave a nice variety of cool new stuff to explore and play with. So, like I said before, you could play as a dragon. We had everybody create either a half dragon, which available to play as a half dragon were things like a half gold dragon, a half silver dragon, half bronze dragon, and these were they were sort of the offspring of a dragon and a kindred. So like an elf, it would be almost like a half elf, but your parentage would not be human and elf; it would be elf and dragon. And so they had some special abilities and stuff as well too. I guess it would be kind of akin to the Dragonborn now that we see in 5th edition. That would be kind of that kind of level of thing. You could only play good or neutral dragons, so you had access to gold, silver, bronze, copper, brass, amethyst, sapphire, emerald, topaz, and crystal dragons. There were kits. So when you played a kindred, which a kindred is like a human, dwarf, gnome, and I think, what was the other one? There were 4 of them. Is there 4? Dwarf, elf, gnome, and human. That's what it was. So those 4. When you played those, they had some they call them kits in this box set that you could pick that gave you certain special abilities. They were sort of similar to the things you would find in the complete series books. But as a dragon, you had to pick a kit. And this was because it was trying to make the dragon characters not so overwhelmingly powerful that they just weren't playable. So you pick these kits, and there were 4 kits available. So there was Dragon PC, which was very similar to any standard dragon you would find in the monster manual or in those kinds of things. Kind of more of a fighter type, but as you grew, you were able to cast certain spells and cantrips and stuff like that. There was Dragon Mage, which focused entirely on magic and gave up certain other things to be able to do that. Dragon Priest, which is, again, the same thing, like a cleric that gave up certain dragon abilities to have access to prayers and blessings and that kind of stuff. And Dragon Psionics, which was only available to the gem dragons, the neutral dragons. And so those were the 4 kits that you could choose from, and they gave you specific things. Like I said, you usually gave up certain things to gain other things, so you weren't overpowering everything. The setting in the campaign book goes into full detail about everything from the world setting itself to things like growth cycles of dragons, mating cycles, the world, the politics of things that went on, the different clans of dragons and that stuff. It was set in a place called Io's Blood Isle. Io was sort of the All-Father. He was the 9-fold dragon and was sort of the over-god of all the other gods in the world. Now, it did borrow some certain things, like Tiamat was goddess of the evil dragons. Bahamut was god of the good dragons. Those, so there were some other things as well, too. But Io was supposedly the overlord of the gods, of the dragon gods, and he gave up part of his life force, dripping his blood across the ocean, which solidified and became these 60-some islands where the dragons held domain over. Now, it doesn't really tell you what world setting is, or if it's a world setting all its own. It does give you a map of the islands, but it just says it's in the ice sea, somewhere out there. When we played in college, we set it in a sort of isolated middle of an isolated ocean in the world of Greyhawk, because we were mixing characters from other things and visiting back and forth and stuff as well too, which was cool. It was fun, and that's the great thing about role-playing games, is that you can blend those things and do crazy stuff like that. So that's where we had set it, although the campaign box doesn't really give you an actual world setting kind of a thing. The dragon clan, their dragons are all separated into different clans, and they all have names, they all have political influences, they all have their strengths and weaknesses. There's a lot of stuff in this box, and the adventure book gave you adventures for different levels to kind of kick off campaigns or to fit into a campaign as you will. I don't know if we ever used any of those adventures. We might have to start the campaign, but like I said, we only played maybe 5 or 6 sessions before we were sort of everybody else wanted to go back into Greyhawk and stuff as well too. So the things that you require materials you have to have to play. It's not a standalone game. It does require you to have a couple of things. You had to have the D&D 2nd Edition Player's Handbook, as well as the Dungeon Master's Guide. One of the other things that I found really essential for this, especially if you want to play any of the gem dragons, because they're psionic characters, creatures, the complete Psionics Handbook. And I always actually just keep this in the box set with this because I know I'm going to need it for that. This was an interesting book. When it first came out and I grabbed a copy of this, I wasn't a fan. I didn't really understand psionics. I didn't really understand why they were cooler or why they would take place of magic. I was always a huge fan of magic, and I still am. I love magic characters and stuff. But it wasn't until I actually got this box set that this really became prominent and had some really cool applications with the gem dragons and such. But those are really the only things that you're required to have other than the box set itself. Some of the stuff that we, optional stuff that we used were the, trading cards. We use these quite a bit. For some of the characters, some of the other, we used some of these guys, as NPCs and villains and stuff as well too. Some of the magic items and stuff in there, it worked really well because it is completely compatible with AD&D 2nd Edition. So there was a lot of great stuff that you could mine from other things into the game. So we use a lot of the magic items and the cards. We use the cards for some of the villains and stuff as well too. Other than that, some of the stuff you could use would be some of the other complete guides, but beyond the Psionics one, you could use the fighters, the bards, the wizards, that kind of stuff as well. But really, really cool box set. The cards had, a sample here. So the cards were double-sided. On one side, they had a big piece of art. On the back, they usually had like a character sheet or some kind of reference chart kind of thing. Card stock, 8.5 by 11. Council of Wyrms. If you can find a copy of this, if you're a collector and can find this on, say half price books or Amazon or something, definitely worth getting. I don't know. I haven't really looked if this is available on the DM's Guild. It's possible. I'm not sure though. I haven't looked. It's very possible you could get all this stuff via PDF or print on demand kind of thing as well too. But Council of Wyrms, if you've never checked it out, really cool, really fun to be able to play a dragon character, or we used to have two characters. We'd have a dragon character and a kindred character, somebody who would sort of work together. Sometimes dragons going into cities, not so popular amongst the regular folk, and so sometimes we would have our kindred characters actually going into Greyhawk proper, into that world of Earth, and being emissaries for the dragons of the Blood Isles and that kind of stuff as well too. But Council of Dragons definitely, or Council of Wyrms, definitely worth checking out. Until next time, I'm Questwise. Stay safe and game on. I am out.